structure, and I got closer to it, and these signs, I think, indicated something about electricity. But look at these, this is curious to me, and I have a Navy buddy who said that he recognized those hooks at the top of this tower as something that was similar to what the 8th Air Force would have, and they would repack the parachutes. So they would hang them from tall up so that they could repack the parachutes properly. I don't know if that's true or not. If anybody has more information on that, you'll have to find me and tell me about that. But this is another nice Google Earth shot of the San Pancrazio Air Base in 2015. So you can see the runway, you can see the buildings that still exist there now that were where the headquarters were for all of 376. You can see some of the hard stands, remnants of the hard stands and the taxi runway here. This may be a little crop duster or something, I don't know, it's a little plane. And these were some kind of, this was not there in 1945, but those look like some little Quonset huts. This is what Sanpan was like at 10,000 feet in 1944. So again, the same orientation. Here's the runway, here's the revetments, here is the headquarters. This is my good-looking dad. Oops. This is my good-looking dad in 1943. And see the resemblance? It was a cold winter in 1944. You've heard that from a lot of folks this weekend. These are just some quick shots that Dad has in his collection from the air base. This Liberando Theater was located over by the headquarters, I believe, by the runway area. Here's all the B-24s. Here's one of his buddies who was one of the waist gunners. This was Bill's trip to Rome for rest and recuperation. Here's Bill right here. He's next to John Michel, who was your, was it radio? Radio operator. Bill was with the Ritter crew. And here's the Ritter crew. I'm not going to take the time to go through all the names, but if you go to the 376 website, Bill and I have posted some great stories, and you can read about some of his missions. There's one today that I want to mention. They started down here in San Pancrazio, and they came up. The target was Vienna. They went around Bratislava, and then bombs away here, and then dropping the bombs and coming back down here to the base. This, by the way, is the island of Vis. We've heard from others about the island of Vis. I am going to be cycling in 2 weeks on this island and this island, Brač and Hvar, and I'll probably see Vis in the distance with the ferry, okay? But so, I just want to give you some more information about this particular bomb run. They were on the aircraft Peggy. Yes, sir. Were you with the 376? No. 484th. And what city were they out of? Oh, Torretta. Very good. Well, right now we're talking. So you went to Vienna, is what you're saying? You went to Vienna for targets, for missions? Many of these targets were bombed over and over and over again by all the groups of the 15th. So it's not surprising. I'm glad you mentioned it. The ill-fated aircraft that I'm going to tell you about now, her name was Peggy, and it was Bill's second mission. And when he went into the briefing room that morning, it was the longest ribbon He told me this story about how he would go in and look at where their crew was going, and they would always make judgments about how long that ribbon was. And his plane that day had the longest ribbon. So they did make it to Vienna, and they did bombs away, but they caught flak. It was accurate and it was intense. So on the way back, I'm going to read a comment from a navigator on one of the adjacent planes. At 14:45, the pilot informed me that Peggy, a B-24G, holding the 7th position in our box, was critically short of gasoline, and he also noted that the number 2 prop was feathered. The ship, after lagging behind for almost half an hour, left the formation heading for the island of Vis at an altitude of 12,000 feet. This was the last time this aircraft was seen by the group in the box. They continued on. So, of the crew of 11, 9 bailed out, including my father. The pilot and the co-pilot perished that day. It was cold. It was snowy. It was mountainous. They were in snow up to here. They didn't know if they were in friendly or enemy territory. It took a while. It took several days for them to kind of get the crew together. And eventually they met up with the partisans. Luckily they were in friendly territory. And they guided them down to a British outpost near Split. And there was a landing strip there. After a few days, the crew got into a small British ship, and they were going to head back to San Pancrazio. But a big storm blew in, and the ship eventually turned back into Split. And my dad tells me when the sun came up, he could see that they were headed back to the mainland, and he was so glad. And I quote my father, "I survived jumping out of a B-24. I'm not going to drown in that damn Adriatic." That's what he said. So they refused to get on another boat. And they hung out with the British for a while, and they treated them pretty well. But a week later, a C-47 came by to pick them up and got them back to San Pancrazio, and he continued another 20 missions or so. So, go to the website, read our stories. We'd be honored if you did. So, you know, when a guy is gone for 2 weeks, they have to do the missing in action. So in the newspaper in Lexington, Kentucky, this is what you know, they had to do. This is the letter that his father got, saying, you know, we're sorry to inform you. They first sent a telegram, which we can't find. We don't know what happened to that telegram, but here's the letter that followed up. And the pilot and the co-pilot, Richard Ritter and Ralph Wilson, we made arrangements to have memorial wreaths placed on the 70th anniversary last January 15th. They're buried in Nettuno, Italy. My dad got the Air Medal for that mission. And now I want to talk about Venosa. Many different people have occupied Venosa through the years. I'm going to skip this right here. Venosa's right here. And a lot of these other cities, you know, you guys know, it's Pantanella, Toretto, San Giovanni, Castelluccio, Cerignola. Okay, my buddy Lee, he's over here. I told him I was going to do an Italian lesson. So everybody say lasagna. Okay, lasagna. Yeah. It's that GN together. So now say Cerignola. Cerignola. That's how the Italians would say that city. So there's your lesson, Lee. Your quiz will be later. Okay, so let's talk about Venosa. Many different people have occupied this region of Italy from ancient times, and it's interesting geography because it was a flat plateau surrounded by ravines on both sides, and then a mountain kind of at the end. This is Mount Volture, but a lot of the airmen here said vulture, but it's the Italians say Volture. So we drove into Venosa, and this is the little town square. They have a nice little cathedral there, and then here's an ancient castle that there's remnants of that there. There are Roman amphitheater ruins there that you can visit in Venosa. This is our bed and breakfast hostess, and she was making a big pot of jam. Does anybody know quince? It's sort of like a pear kind of like thing, and she made quince jam, and we had that for breakfast. She also told us about this great website, so if you're with the 485th, I would recommend you checking this out. These are the Italian historians that today are keeping the history alive of the 485th as they lived in Venosa in the war, and they have some great information on this website, and I've just taken some of the pictures here for you to see. This is the Venosa airfield from 1944. Here's your runway. Again, the pattern of the taxi, whatever you call them, and the revetments with the planes going around. Close-up of the planes and the revetments. This is Venosa from 1944 with the Red Cross girls. This building here was the building that I saw, and it was in a farm field. And this is 1944. Here's 2015. I could not get any closer because of this clay. Remember the clay I showed you earlier? They had just turned this clay, and it was like, I knew if I stepped into it, I'd probably still be stuck there. I couldn't get any closer, and there was really no driveway or anything. There's a car here. It's still occupied. There was a tractor across the road, you know, tilling. So it's a farm. But this was the 485th Officer Headquarters in the 40s. And I think they used these buildings for different things too, but that building, let's just go back, 1944, 2015. Now here's my dad's best buddy, Marvin Nicholson. He was with the 485th, 830th Squadron. I want to tell you about one of his missions on April 11th, 1945, so late in the war. Marvin his plane was in the first box over the target. They were going to, I'm not quite sure where they were going to. Oh, Campo de Trens Railroad Bridge. Well, they did destroy the bridge, but flak was intense and accurate. The pilot, Adams, sustained an upper vertebrae injury and was unconscious. And the co-pilot, Barrison, nearly had his right foot shot off. Marvin, the ball gunner, took the co-pilot's seat about the time that the pilot came back to. So they removed the co-pilot and attended to his wounds. And he sat kind of in between the pilot and the co-pilot, or the pilot and Marvin, who was in the co-pilot's seat, to kind of give him verbal cues. And about that time, Adams came to, but he couldn't really bend his neck because of his vertebrae injury. But he still could like fly the controls, but he couldn't look about. The crew was given a choice to bail or stay the course. They decided that they all would stay the course. They flew another 2 hours, and they made it to Ancona Airfield, which is in northern Italy. which was being used by the South African Air Force. They had the B-26 Marauders at that particular